recent questions about how I mix and process all my vocals, especially on live performances. So what I do is I'm given an audio track, just wave files, like full band, tons of singers, drums, guitars, bass, everything like that. And I'm just given files, and I have to make them sound, I'm going to teach you how to kind of what I do to make them sound nice and full, thick vocal that's wide and clear and bright and really crispy on the top, but can also fill out and cut through on the bottom as well. So I'm going to show you all my return tracks for effects and everything too. So we're going to go through just my chain of what I use typically to make this sound the way it does. So I'm going to use my friend Taylor as an example, singing this song. This is the raw audio file with absolutely nothing done to it.
Lord, there's nothing.
Yeah, he's singing great. It's just the audio file is very dark and muffled. You can hear it's just very, very plain Jane. There's just nothing special about the actual track. So what I'm going to do, what I always start with in my chain, first thing, no matter what, every time, is a form of auto-tune. So I've been using Waves Tune Real Time. It's really great. What you can do is just pick the key of your song, whatever you're in, and then you can dial in how quickly it chooses the notes. So if you dial it in a lot like this, that's how you kind of get, if it's a very quick attack like that, you're going to sound like T-Pain.
Lord, there's nothing.
And obviously you don't want that, and every singer is different. He's a very good singer, so he doesn't need very much at all. So we're just gonna, I usually go around halfway or maybe even a little less, just to make sure. What it does, it just caps all the pitches in the center, some of those that can slide under or above, and just help it stay right in the center. And that just immediately helps my ears to continue mixing, so that way I'm not hearing like any like sour notes or anything right off the back. So moving on, we're gonna go, I always use the Virtual Mix Rack by Slate. It's very great. What I have here, at least for his chain, is the FG116 compressor. It's a very, very good compressor. I love how it sounds. It's got good color. I use this one as probably one of my main driving. So I like to have about 7 dB of reduction at this point. I just have it on the Lead Vox Classic preset, so it sounds like this.
The world,
Okay.
but it couldn't fill me.
Yeah, that was kind of a soft part. Let's go to a live.
Lord, there's nothing better than you.
I mean, you could tell it's already kind of beefing it up a little more. And then what I add after that is this FGN, just a British EQ rack right here. I just take the high and low shelf. So I go and just boost a little less, a little more. And then I don't touch the mids on this one. And then I go on the 150 hertz, and then I kind of bring that shelf down just a little bit, just to kind of take some of the muddiness out, and then a high pass filter at about 70 to 80, depending on who it is. And this little plugin here, the Air EQ, is amazing. It's just one big knob. You crank it up just a couple of dB, and it's going to give it just a beautiful little singe on the top like this.
Lord, there's nothing
On.
better than you. There's nothing.
It just gives a little bit. And this is before we do any major EQ or anything. I just like to give it a little clarity. Okay, so that's all of that. So next up, I use the EQ8. That's just the stock standard Ableton plugin. I'm going to do another little scoop on the bottom here, just to kind of bring out some of that nasty low end, because you can see here,
Lord, there's nothing.
all that right there is still being used. So I kind of pulled that out. And then this is where you can find kind of treble spots or little sweeping techniques, which is where you would take like a band here, you would go all the way up with the gain, and then sweep it to find your nasty frequency.
Lord, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing.
Hear a little something right there, so I'll just pull that down a little bit. And right here, he specifically had something on around 2.8 or so, almost 3K, that kind of eval, so I brought that down. And that's where you can just do a little bit of that. And then next up, a de-esser. So I use Elosis E2. It's an amazing plugin. Any de-esser will do. Just find your frequency that you need. It's usually going to be between 6 and 10K. Find your S and then squash it a little bit. That's just going to help those S's not be piercing in the ear, in your mix, and not cut through too much and ruin everything. Next up is the LA2A. One of my favorite compressors ever. This one I have doing just a little bit, maybe 3 to 4 dB of reduction, just on the Vox preset. Presets are great. You can always use presets and then work from there. It's a great starting point. Okay, and then
Lord, there's nothing better than you.
You can tell that adds a lot of volume. This thing has really good color and volume to it, so I love using it as much as I can on pretty much any vocal. It's a great little limiting compressor here. So I'll turn it back on.
Lord, there's nothing.
And right there, I'm barely even getting anything, but it just adds this nice little fullness to the sound. Next up is one more layer of compression, is just an RVox. This is one of the smoothest little compressors I've ever heard. I have just like -3 dB of just reduction, just kind of pumping
Lord,
it.
there's nothing better than you.
It kind of levels it out to me a little bit and pulls out a little bit of the muddiness all of a sudden. You know, you can do a lot with just a few things for sure. And you may look at this and think it's a lot, but they're all doing minimal things. They're nothing is maxed out or cranked out, because that'll ruin your sound. Now this right here, if you're not using the SSL channel strip, you need to be, because I use this on literally every single thing that I ever mix, no matter what instrument or vocal. This is always on there. So it's the smoothest EQ, and it's got great dynamics, amazing gate, everything. The analog switch has a cool color to it, but you can do a lot with it. And I put it on the CLA Vox preset, and it's just got a cool little sound. But you can take very, very sweet EQs. I'm around 8K for him, boosted a little bit, like 1.6, 1.4, okay, and then up a little bit, and then he had a little box right there at about 500 hertz, and so I pulled out just a hair, and then just also a hair at around 300 to get some of that muddy out. Just a hair, a little bit on the compression, not too much ratio, because I don't want to squash it, because I already have these other compressors. And then this gate, this is mainly just for the drums, because there's a lot of drum bleed over in their mics, so I had to kind of work that a certain way, but that's not typical. And then last but not least,
Lord, there's nothing better than you.
you can hear it adds just a nice little sweet thing to it, the last little bit of EQ. And then last but not least, for sure, on this, you can use a de-esser for different things. So at around 2.8 or 3K, here, he had this kind of eval kind of going on that was, like I talked about earlier right here, and it was still kind of cutting through just a little too much, and it was cutting through in a bad way in the mix. So what I did, put a de-esser on it, and that actually will kind of squash and slightly compress that little area that you're hearing. So you can kind of dial it in and find where that is, and just turn the threshold just enough in the range, just enough to where it'll actually catch that and not squash the sound too much and bring down the volume. So that's pretty much what I'm using for that. And then now I'll go through my return tracks down here. So I have a medium reverb, which is, I used Slate. I used the Verb Suite Classic, one of my favorite ones. I just have it on the smooth vocal preset. I think I upped the decay a little bit just to match the length that I liked. I put the width up a little bit, the chorus up a hair, little pre-delay. You always want a little pre-delay, just because I love when the dry vocal hits first and then you hear just a little bit of decay of whatever kind of reverb you're using. So that way it's not going to mud anything up. Little attack, and then I put a little bit of EQ on it as well, a little high end, took out a little low to make it not muddy. And so that's kind of what I use for that. Let me crank that up really quick, turn that off. So that's what this one sounds like.
Better than you.
So you it's just a little bit. And then I have a short reverb, same thing. It's just another Verb Suite with only 773 milliseconds on this song. Brought it way down, less width and everything, really no EQ. This is just mainly a short little decay to kind of sound, kind of gives a cool sound. I'll crank it up to let you hear what it sounds like.
Lord, there's nothing better than.
It almost helps it cut through. It's like it kind of widens your thing a little bit without being wide here.
Lord, there's nothing.
Gives a cool little texture. And then last, for reverbs, I have a long reverb, and I'm using the H Reverb plugin. Amazing. There's a vocal reverb of goodness preset by Greg Wells. It's amazing. It comes on it. It's a 4-second delay, and I extended it even a little more. These are great settings. He is Adele's producer and mixer, so I love what he does on her, and it's just a great preset, very smooth. And what actually happens is he takes a lot of the high end out and damps a lot of the top. So it's pretty cool. I love the way it sounds. It gives a long kind of sound to it. So I'll crank that as well and let you hear it. It's like a cave almost.
Lord, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing.
Pretty cool. I love the way it sounds. And then just a couple of delays, it's a half note delay and then a quarter note delay. Nothing crazy. I have the repeater plugin that I'm using. Just a great little plugin as well. And just set on actually this is set on eighth notes, not half notes. I should change that. There's a color knob that adds a good sound, because I'm all about color, adding color to anything, because that's what makes things stand out and clear, and you can make space for stuff. Okay, and then that's pretty much all I have there. I have one last little compressor here on a return track as a parallel, just an L1 limiter. This is just to kind of squash and have a really heavy compression sound. And I add just a hair of that. You can see on my last return on this track, on all of them. I have it, kind of pushing a little bit on some stuff. And it just helps kind of round it out and catch any peaks or anything like that are still happening. Okay, and then last but not least, the very last thing I do is Melodyne. You're probably wondering all about it. That's how I get that pitch perfect sound with all my vocals, and how I can take sometimes a shaky vocal, like a really off-pitch vocal, or like any kind of example you can give, and just make it sound just very rounded out, radio ready, just like we're all used to hearing it anyway. When you listen to albums, everything is on pitch, it's perfect on time, everything is great about it. And that's what Melodyne can do. It's such an amazing plugin. So what I can do here is go,
Lord, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing.
So it actually prints every syllable, every note and waveform that he sings. And there are notes here, just like a keyboard, going up the chromatic scale all the way up. You can go as high or low as you want. And then what you can do is they're all separate. And that's how it prints it. And it reads it that way. And so what you can do is go and literally separate the notes and pick wherever you want them to go. The center of each bar here is the true center pitch. And the wave is actually what their vocal is doing, sliding up to a note, or like the little shake here, like that's like a vibrato.
Than you. Oh, you turn a great
Like right here. Here, we'll skip over here, this red one.
gardens.
If you didn't want that vibrato, you could go here and take it out.
Kept turning graves into gardens.
See, it sounds a little wonky, so you don't want to mess things up too much, but it's a very useful tool just to kind of help everything. So let's say this top note, let's just say like right here. Let's say this was a little off pitch, like when he actually sang it. Let's say it was like this.
And nothing is better than you.
And I was like, oh, he didn't quite get up there. You can pull this and go right where it needs to be. And then,
And nothing is better than you. Oh, you turn a graves into
it's a pretty amazing plugin. You can take the drift. So if something is leaning, like let's say that's like this and his vibrato is kind of all over the place, you can take the drift tool and you can bring it in and to be very straight and narrow all the way across. It's a beautiful plugin. This thing is really the magic maker on the end. And so you have that with a little auto-tune, some compression, some EQ, some de-essing, compressor, more EQ, a little more compress, and then a de-esser just for some little, multi-band compressing almost, and then some reverbs and delays, and that's pretty much all it is. So I will show you one more time. If you take off all these plugins, and I'll just put them on one at a time and show you what they sound like for a last product. So here's flat.
You turn bones into armies.
Okay, and then we'll turn everything on.
You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who kept turning great.
Now I'll play it with the full band, last but not least.
You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only
go. That's pretty much what I've been using on my live takes here. So enjoy this video. I'll be coming out with some more on how to mix a studio vocal that's been very done in a treated room on a large diaphragm condenser mic, and kind of go through what that's like. And if you want more details or any questions, like if you want me to dive deeper into EQ and like really how to do that, or how to compress the right correct way, and what all that means, delays, reverbs, anything like that, you know, file management, any questions you have, shoot them my way and I'll do my best to make a video to cater to that. So thank you guys so much and enjoy.